Hey guys, how is it going? I hope you guys are doing well. So it's a rainy day today, but actually that reminds me, check out this crazy storm we had just the other day.
Male presidential candidate in the waning days of the election, which is patently false. And it's one of the things that I think is most important about this. Now look, this is another piece of it. It's another...
So remember when I unboxed this beautiful camera, which is the Yashica Electro 35 film camera. Look at this beauty, guys. So ever since I got this camera, I've been looking for an opportunity to shoot with it. I've never really had the opportunity to until now. And also recently I had one of you guys make a comment asking they would like to see images from this camera, and I responded saying that hey, I would actually welcome the fall with this camera here. And to keep to my promise, that's exactly what I'm gonna do. So this is the first time I'm loading this camera. I'm gonna do a little battery check here. That's the button here, and then when I press it, this lights up right there. So the battery is good, it's green, that means it's good. I'm gonna lift up the film rewind knob here, and when I do, it just pops up the back. See, the back just pops out like that. And take a look at the insides here, just so beautiful. Nice and clean camera. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and load this with some film. This goes in, it's nice and clean, no obstructions in. Lower this to trap the film canister in there. Stretch this across. You know what, I really like the loading mechanism on this. You see these little slots there? I like cameras that have those slots. It makes it easier, in my opinion, to load this with film. So you just slip it in there, you know, just slip it right in there like that. A little bit like that, yeah, it goes right in. And now you wind, see how, and make sure that this fits into those notches there, just like that, and it's pretty much taking this up like that. So at this point I can close the back of the camera, and now I'm pretty much set to go. So what I'll do is I'll just fire this. So I'm gonna wind it again. Now the first few shots will be obviously wasted because it's exposed. I'm gonna test it out before I head out. Don't forget to bring down this tab. So the thing worth mentioning is that after you load your film, depending on the film that you loaded it with, you have to make sure that you set your ISO dial to correspond with the film that you loaded it with. So what I'm gonna do now is, because it's 200 film, I'm just gonna go and set this dial, move it to 200. So right away there are a few things that I noticed about this camera. So I can see that this is the bulb setting, where I can have the option of shooting as long as I want, how many seconds I want. Then there's the auto setting here, which I'll talk about soon. But there's also the flash option here. If you're attaching a flash, you would use that setting. The auto setting here is one that is really straightforward pretty much, because right over here you see these aperture settings here, and right on the dial you see when it's bright sunlight you would set it to around here, which is between 16 and 11. F11, F16 is really what they're recommending on this camera. So this camera is pretty simple. It's for the average user, right? It's really entry level, but it's also quite powerful if you know what you're doing with it. And over here, when it's cloudy, they recommend that you set it to around F4 here, and you see the cloud icon. So today is kind of cloudy, so I'll most likely be using either f2.8 or f4. And over here you see some windows over here, indicating that if you're indoors where it's darker, that's really what you want to be using, that setting. That's f1.7. This camera goes down to f1.7, which is actually pretty fast. So basically this camera is an aperture priority mode camera, from what I can see. So basically you set your aperture and the camera automatically sets the shutter speed for you based on the aperture setting, right? So you can have some creativity with the aperture settings. All really you have to worry about is the aperture setting on this camera. So it's pretty straightforward, I would say. And with this, I'm ready to go out and shoot and basically have some fun with this camera. I think this is going to be wonderful. Today is a bit rainy, but it's not too bad out there. I'm gonna go out and I'm actually going to shoot with this lovely camera.
One eternity later.
So it just so happens that just a day or two after I decide to go out with my Yashica Electro 35 camera here to shoot basically to shoot the fall, guess what happens? On the last day of summer, guess what happens? Look, winter decides to show up. On the last day of summer, guys, look, the trees are still green, the grass is still green. We have a bit of colors changing in the trees over there, as you can see, and we have snow. Can you believe that? We have winter, like winter is here. Basically, we skipped from summer straight to the winter. And this is just unbelievable. I mean, yesterday was -1, -2 degrees last night, and I'm talking about Celsius. Today, right now, it's about 2 degrees Celsius. So it's kind of cold actually. So I'm actually quite dressed up for winter, and I have my mitts on, and this is unnatural. But the advantage that this provides is that this also gives, it creates this unnatural look. It's just an unnatural look. Seeing the green and the snow on the green, that's a contrast that I'm hoping to capture. Now I must admit that this camera here is not the best camera to capture this sort of scene, but I'm gonna walk around and take a few pictures, and we'll see how it goes. Maybe this might be a good test for it. So let's get to it. Hey, so yeah, so I have taken this camera for a spin, and I have looked at some of the sample images from this camera, and I must say that shooting with this camera is a mixed bag for me, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I mean, it may seem as if I'm really excited about all film cameras, but not all film cameras do it for me personally. Let's start with the positives about this camera. This camera has a beautiful design. I mean, just look at it, guys. Look at it. It is so beautiful. Such a beautiful camera. Really, really well designed camera. Everything seems to be in place, in a good place as well. This over here, the film advance lever is not bad at all. It's actually cranks pretty nicely. It has a lock button over here, which is very convenient, so you don't, once it's in the lock position, you can't fire the shutter, which is a good thing. The selector for ISOs and ASAs right there, so it's actually quite convenient. I found the settings on the lens to be straightforward enough. The indicators on the aperture dial is actually quite helpful for beginners. I believe this camera was made for a regular entry-level person, somebody that wants to shoot film or doesn't have the basics, right? Or doesn't have the experience. And then the camera does it all for you. So it's practically an aperture priority mode camera. So you basically set it, and then it will set your shutter speed for you automatically. From the pictures that I got, I think it does a fairly decent job. I think that the images turned out pretty decent. So I'm really happy about that. I think the camera does a pretty decent job on getting the camera on getting the shutter speed settings. There's a self timer switch over here, which you can pull down, and then it does the self-timing for you. The other good thing is that this camera is fairly easy to load with film, as you saw, as I demonstrated earlier. Also, because it's a rangefinder, you're able to focus with this mechanism that's built in that allows you to see the images. It's almost like parallax. You're able to see the images align, and when the images align, that means whatever you're focusing on is in focus. The disadvantage with that method is I found it very difficult to focus on moving targets. It's practically impossible to focus on moving targets and to get a good focus on that. My best advice to you would be actually just set the range, just use the distance. Set your distance right here. Basically figure out how far your subject is from you. If your subject is moving, anticipate where your subject is going to be, and use that dial to set your distance and just shoot. I mean, I would not rely on that system to even try and figure the focus. It's just too cumbersome. If you have a family, if you have kids that are moving around, unless your kid is stationary, I would not recommend a camera like this for you. The other thing that I didn't like about this camera is the position of this focusing dial. I would have preferred if they had put the focusing dial closer to the edge here so that it's easier. What I found to be quite cumbersome is trying to put this on my eye and then bringing my fingers all the way close to the body and trying to adjust this. This was kind of hard. Usually it's easier when it's closer to the edge, then you're able to adjust it right away. Bringing it close to the body is awkward. Like, it is so awkward trying to align your fingers close to the body just to adjust the focus. It's easier when it's closer to the edge. You see that angle between? That angle is much easier than trying to do this. See that? That it makes quite a difference in the convenience factor. So I didn't like that about this camera. The other thing is the images just had this greenish hue to them, and I had to do some color correction. For example, this image right here, I had to do color correction to make it look like this, and this is how it actually looked in real life. So I know that has to do with the kind of elements in this lens here and how this lens is engineered. So that was a bit of a downer as well. However, the images were pretty sharp. As you can see, they're fairly sharp. Now here's the big one. Here's the one big thing that really I didn't like, and I think some people may actually find this not to be a disadvantage. For me, when I shoot with film cameras, I like the loud sound of the shutter. Okay, I don't want it to be extremely loud, but I do like the satisfying sound of the shutter. That is reaffirming for me. It just allows me to feel like this, yeah, I actually took the shot. What I noticed with this camera, so listen to the sound of this shutter. Did you hear anything? That little sound that you heard was the sound of the shutter. Okay, I'll try again with some bright light so you hear it. You see that? It's a tiny little click. A tiny little click, which some people may actually prefer it, but I don't. I actually like my shutters a bit. I like the sound of a strong shutter. It's very reaffirming for me. Compare that to this sound over here. Just listen to the sound of this shutter. You hear that? And you feel the vibration as it makes that sound. Right? You heard that sound? That is a rich sound of this shutter. It's very reaffirming for me. You hear that? And that's one thing that I found to be an issue for me personally, because I like that sound. There were times when I took images and I was not sure if it actually took the images. Like I was like, did I hear anything? Did this thing actually fire? So I was pleasantly surprised when I developed the images and I actually saw that it took the images. The shutter is so silent. I guess on the good side, if you're looking for a street photography camera, this may be a good camera for you. Who would I recommend this camera to? I would recommend this camera to an enthusiast, someone that is into film and you really know your basics and you want a fun little camera that you have the time to just go by yourself and have some fun and play with the settings. There's not much to play with really, but I would still recommend this for an enthusiast because I've shot with many different kind of film cameras, and I think that this camera is not the most enjoyable camera to shoot with personally, from my perspective. I think for a beginner, you want a camera that would really engage you, that you would really fall in love with. You don't want a camera that would frustrate you every now and then and maybe even discourage you from the art of film photography. So I would not recommend this camera for if you are just starting into film photography. I would not even recommend a rangefinder for just someone that's just green in film photography at all. I would actually recommend that you get a camera such as this one here, which is the Nikon EM. Right? If you're really into film photography or you're an enthusiast or you're a beginner, I would recommend a camera like this because a camera like this is quite simple. It actually has the auto mode and is practically aperture priority, and once you set your aperture, it will determine the shutter speed just the same as this will do it. However, the beautiful thing about this is that it's not a rangefinder. You don't have to guess your focus. You can actually see what you see is basically what you get, right? So you can actually focus just like you would in any other camera and see exactly what you're going to get, right? So I would recommend a camera like that, and notice the focusing range, how far it is from the body. This is normal. This is really what most cameras have, and it makes a difference. If I were to grade this camera compared to the other cameras that I have, I would give this camera a strong B. You know, I'll give it a B, a grade B compared to the other cameras that I have. I'll not even give it a B plus. I will not give it an A for sure. I'm not gonna give it a C, but I'll give it a B. It's an average camera with some issues, right? So but you will enjoy shooting with it. There are better cameras though. There are much better cameras, and it's no wonder that they made so many of these cameras. The design is beautiful, it's so classic. It is really nice, but there are better cameras out there. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. I hope you liked this video if you did enjoy it. And if you have not already subscribed, please do click the subscribe button. That will be very much appreciated. So until the next time, guys, I hope you have a wonderful day. And as always, stay safe.